Hi, good evening. I'm Yaakov Katz, a senior fellow at the Jewish People Policy Institute, and welcome to another episode of our inside analysis of Israel's war against Hamas. I'm joined this evening by two people. Yedidya Stern, Professor Yedidya Stern, the president of JPPI, and we will be joined shortly by Amira Aronovich, the CEO of the Jewish Agency for Israel. We're waiting momentarily for Amira to join us. There's a lot going on and a lot to discuss. We'll have Amira with us to discuss, hopefully, the Jewish Agency and the roles that they have been playing in the war and the aftermath of what is happening down south and what the world, the Jewish world in particular, can do now with the aftermath of what happened on October 7th, the displacement of so many people. But until Amira comes, Yedidya, maybe we should at least start talking about one of the big issues, maybe the thorniest issue of this war, and that is the issue of the hostages. It's really coming to the forefront as we speak. Lots of rumors circulating, particularly today, with what's been happening, especially at the Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. Talks of how the IDF might have found there some indication of what happened to some of the hostages, evidence to one way or the other, and maybe we'll find something out in the hours or possibly a day or two to come. But with that happening, there's also a lot of talk here in Israel. We know that the cabinet has been meeting regularly over the week, the security cabinet, the inner war cabinet forum, as well as the larger government to discuss what will happen if there's a deal that's on the table for the release of some of the hostages that would have to include the return or a swap and release of some of the Palestinian security prisoners in Israeli jails, but also, and this personally I feel is maybe the bigger price to some extent, is a pause, a significant pause in the fighting, and what that would mean for the continuation of the conflict. And it's a huge dilemma, right? Because we have two different interests and priorities, obviously, that are at play here. On the one hand, Amira, welcome. Thank you for joining. On the one hand, we have the issue of continuing the battle against Hamas to degrade their capabilities, to topple their government from in Gaza, and to be able to provide security for the entire state of Israel. On the other hand, we have 240 people almost who are being held in Gaza. We just heard the other day of a woman who gave birth in the Gaza Strip, one of the hostages. So there's a baby just a few days old who's now in Hamas captivity. When you think about these issues and what they mean and the challenges and the conflict of interest, how do you understand Israel's role in the government in being able to manage the difference and the tension between what's needed to provide overall security, but also to provide a resolution and to bring people home, right? The social contract between a state and its people.
Well, first of all, shalom, Yaakov, shalom, Amira, shalom, everybody who is joining us. Yes, not an eye remained dry, Yaakov, when we heard on the news that apparently one of the captive gave birth to a child in captivity. It's creepy. It's shocking. It's really unimaginable. This is one person. And we have, as we said, 240 people there. Yesterday, a march of the family of the captives started to walk from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And after a few days of marching, they will stay in front of the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, in order to pressure the state of Israel to act in the most decisive way possible. And as we all know, returning the captives is one of the two goals of this war. Now, I would like to say something which may be news for those who are not Israelis, but Israeli media, for a change, is acting very responsibly. They made a decision, the traditional media, not to publish any videos of the captives that Hamas publishes as part of its psychological war against Israel. This is a mature decision, and I really respect it and think it's great. However, Nevertheless, as you mentioned, Yaakov, obviously the pressure is building up, and understandably so. Now, I know that Hamas will continue this pressure, this psychological war using the hostages, and I assume this will accompany us for a long period of time after the war will be over. In realistic terms, I would assume that not all the captives are alive, and we don't know who is not alive, and they might be missing, like Ron Arad, as you all remember years ago, and maybe even some of them were smuggled out of Gaza Strip to elsewhere, and it will be very difficult to locate them. So this is going to be the weapon that Hamas will keep aimed at us, and it might be working even after the Hamas as an organization will not exist in the Gaza Strip. Now, how should Israel act? That's your question. And I think some of us feel that the most important and maybe the only important thing is protecting the lives of these people. Arvut hadadit, they are our people, and we have to bring them back no matter what. Some people, and I'm one of this group, feel that we have to think in terms of national security. Sometimes, it is very painful to say, but this is reality, there is a tension between these two important values. On one hand, saving a life, and on the other hand, protecting national security. Remember what happened with the release of Gilad Shalit, only one soldier, and Israel significantly compromised its national security in order to express its honorable commitment to the release of a one prisoner. And indeed, as we know, the leaders of the Hamas in the current war are terrorists, murderers, that Israel released in order to get back one soldier. Was it the right decision? Is it responsible to sacrifice supreme security interest in order to return our brothers and sisters? It's a huge dilemma. It's a huge dilemma. I would like to end by saying that the Jewish tradition, this is a Jewish state, Jewish tradition teaches us, I think, an important lesson. And it says in the Talmud, and we have lots of responsa in the past, that we must not redeem captives at any price, but only at what one may say a reasonable price, meaning a price that will not destroy yourself. So it is difficult to convey such a message at this time. The blood is boiling, but you know, I think that brave leadership should make brave decisions.
Yeah, this is part of that. I think we knew from the beginning. It's this heart-wrenching reality that Israel is in beyond the battlefield, is what Hamas is able to do with the people that they've taken captive, and how they can just continue to rip out our hearts on not a daily basis, an hourly basis, and to imagine just what these people are going through. Amira, thank you very much for joining us here at JPPI in our daily webinar that we started since the beginning of this war. And hard to believe that we're already 6 weeks into this. It's mind-blowing. Someone said to me today, this is the 30th episode, and it's just been almost a blur how much we've how much time has passed and how much we've been through as a people and as a country. And I thought of that when you confirmed your participation. The Jewish Agency, and you even in the last 5 years as Director General, have really overseen a lot of emergency situations for the Jewish people, right? Whether all over the world, the Russia-Ukraine war, helping get Jews out and getting them to safety, and getting them, even those who remained, getting them the needs to remain safe and secure. So maybe just if you could give us kind of an overlook of just what the Jewish Agency has been doing since the beginning of this war. What are the projects, the programs, the different roles that you've been playing to assist in the aftermath of what happened and the tragedies of October 7th?
So thank you, Yaakov, and thank you, Yedidia and the JPPI for this important daily webinar, which we are supporting even when I'm not here, but also for the opportunity to speak here today. I'll say, the Jewish Agency, as I see it, which is over 93 years old, has always been playing a major role, and a unique one, being an agent of the Jewish collective. So, we are, at our core, we've always been this long arm of the Jewish people to address the biggest challenges The biggest one was to establish this country, which was a joint venture with World Jewry, as well as then the decades of building this country, building 900 settlements, including in the Western Negev surrounding Gaza and in the confrontation line in the north, as well as providing all the basic infrastructure for the country. And then in the 70s, the Project Renewal, mobilizing World Jewry to support the weaker populations in Israel, and many, many other roles. But I think what is a thread all through those years is that the Jewish Agency sees itself as kind of an infrastructure, a global one that provides itself for the state of Israel whenever such crises happen. This is how we've been, at the Second Lebanon War. This is how we've been after Protective Edge. And every time there's such a crisis. And what this means really is that immediately we move from just being an organization that carries out its own programs to support its own beneficiaries, but rather provide our expertise, our operational capabilities, our unique status vis-a-vis the government, our ability, our globality and ability to mobilize the Jewish people, all in the service of those priorities of the state of Israel. And in that sense, I'll say that, as we were all shocked and broken and grieving with all of the country with the terror and the horrific terror attacks of the 7th of October, we immediately went into this status of operation. So first, we take care of vulnerable populations. These are populations that we are taking care of 24/7, every day, all through the year. Those are the ones we have no one else to go to but us. We are their home. I talk about thousands of new olim, new immigrants, which we have brought together, World Jewry, to Israel all along the years. Just a few months ago, completed a huge wave of Aliyah from Ethiopia, as well as 90,000 who came from Russia and Ukraine. Those people that, while in their initial period of absorption, are residing within our own facilities, are at the most vulnerable situation in these cases. So providing them the safety, being able to be evacuated from fire zones into more safer areas, providing them with the psychological assistance or any other humanitarian need that they have becomes a role of ours, as well as thousands of elderly residents of our old age homes of Amigur, our subsidiary, all across the south as well as the north. These are populations that when they need that kind of assistance, they turn to us. For example, those elderly cannot be even evacuated from those areas. So when we have them reside in Ashkelon or in Ofakim or Sderot, we have to make sure that they are safe, that their facilities are guarded with armed people with this current horrific circumstances, that they are provided with food because they can't go out shopping, or with medicine, or cope with loneliness because they can't have their family members visit them, as well as populations like lone soldiers, which we are taking care of thousands of those, and mostly assisting their families, thousands of families of those young adults who made this amazing decisions, coming to Israel, drafting into the army, risking their life. Unfortunately, we've seen some of them among the ones who've fallen in the last 5 weeks. And so supporting those lone soldiers here and their families. And so it's a domain of a whole range of vulnerable populations, which at this situation of emergency, we are their go-to address. World Jewry has supported the bringing of them, and therefore has to be there with them when they have no other one to turn to. The other domain is a direct relief one. This is where we bring into play our ability to widely serve all of the populations who are affected in this kind of a situation. And the major tool by which we do that is our Victim of Terror Fund. This is a fund that we have established not now towards this war, but rather 20 years ago after the Second Intifada broke. And what it is really is the infrastructure or the systemic assistance to civilian families who are being affected by terror attacks. This means what we do is we provide an immediate cash grant to anyone who has been wounded or, God forbid, lost a family member or got a hit to their house where they cannot go back to. And within 48 hours of that attack, we provide them with that support. But more importantly, we then accompany them for a period of 3 years and walk with them through the rehabilitation journey, providing them with a whole range of support to them, the family members, the kids. The main thing that has happened is that never has we expected or been prepared for the scale of the kind of amount of families that we have to treat now. So just to give the sense of it, on a regular year, we probably treat between 1,000 to 1,200 families who unfortunately join this club, so to speak, of people who've been affected by terror attacks. We are now, since 5.5 weeks ago, we have been contacting and already treating over 6,500 families.
Wow.
And we have provided over 5,500 of them already with the grants, and started this process now of getting to know and learn better each and every family. We start as early as when they're in the hospitals. We work with all the communities who have been evacuated from the kibbutzim and moshavim in the surrounding Gaza Strip. And what we know is that in this current specific war, the kind of level by which their life were destroyed and damaged are such that it will require a much more deeper intervention and assistance and support than what we have ever done until today. And so we are looking into this Victim of Terror Fund, widening its support to additional humanitarian grants and support that we give to those families and those communities. While we work in full coordination, by the way, it's important to say, with the resilience centers and the social services departments in the municipalities. But we understand that the current situation is one that we have never experienced, and the kind of assistance that they will need is much more serious than ever before. What we also do is that we start working with the different communities that are now looking into what would midterm rehabilitation look like. So where the first 5 weeks were mostly, this refugee situation and survival situation, where they're mostly were dealing with their grief and their agony and their losses. We know that all of those communities who are now in the hotels are looking into what would the next stage look like. So not yet being able to go back to their settlements, but then what would a temporary status would look like? And then what is it that we can bring to help them during that situation? And that's a wide portfolio of things, including providing them with different interventions to work with the populations as they go through rehabilitation, as well as bringing communities from abroad to partner with them and in kind of a solidarity be with them in that new phase, as well as some physical building support that we give. So a whole range of things that we look into working with them while they step into this interim period. And I'll say lastly that it's very clear to us that the mobilization of Jews from around the world is one that is very much needed, as we've done in the past, and we see huge desire and interest from among communities to take part in this journey of theirs, whether through volunteerism, whether through solidarity, whether through support of resources. And we're also anticipating probably a wave of Aliyah as this war ends. So these are all areas whereby we're looking to work very delicately, and I'd say in a modest way, with those communities, being attentive to their needs, to the pace of things that they need. But we see ourselves playing this vital role also in the midterm and long term with them, based on the expertise and capacity that we carry out on a regular day.
So I want to zoom in on one of those issues that you brought up, Amira, which is the issue of the displaced people. We actually had a staff meeting earlier this week at JPPI where we spoke about plitim, Jewish refugees. And I think that, I walked away feeling it was more of a historical presentation by one of the fellows, Nurit Cohen, but I walked away feeling, and I think everyone pretty much said this, was that we are facing now the greatest Jewish refugee crisis or Israeli refugee crisis since 1948. We have over, I think, 120,000 people. You take the people in the north as well as the people in the south who have been displaced and taken out of their homes. I want to start with you, Yedidia. You were a member of the state-appointed Commission of Inquiry that was set up a few years after the Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip back in 2005. And there was a special administration similar to today. Then it was called Sela. Now it's called Tkuma. But that was meant to help all the things that Amira just mentioned about for the people who were taken out of their homes in the Gush Katif settlement block in the Gaza Strip when the Israeli settlements used to be there. And it was pretty much, maybe I'm wrong, but a colossal failure on the part of the government. And you were part of that commission that looked into it. So maybe just briefly, if you could talk about some of the the regulatory or bureaucratic or governmental issues that people have to work through now, right?
Yeah, but I'll do that. Just before that, I want everybody to understand that when you mention 120, it's actually 150,000 Israelis who cannot sleep tonight in their bed. We're talking about three different groups. One group is those who live in the north of the country, and they were evacuated because of a fear that Hezbollah will attack them at the same point in the future, and they're not ready to sleep under danger. So they were evacuated. Nobody knows right now what will be the future there, because they will not go back if Hezbollah stays. And right now there's no war with Hezbollah, and either there will be a new combat with Hezbollah or some kind of a political deal that will push them and move them away from our border. It's not clear what will happen. And this is a significant part of the dilemma that the government should take care of sooner than later. Second group is a bit easier to deal with. We're talking about people who live next to Gaza Strip, but their houses and their towns are still in good shape. And hopefully soon enough, when Israel will finish with the Hamas, they will be able to go back home, apparently no problem. But you're asking, Yaakov, about the third group, those who were left without homes because their villages, their homes were taken over by the Hezbollah on the 7th of October, and there's no place for them to come back to.
Right.
So you're right, we have some kind of experience. It's not the same situation, obviously, but you can compare the two situations. When the disengagement from Gaza Strip happened, about 8,000 Israelis who lived there were evacuated by the state of Israel, and for years they didn't find a way to participate normally in life because of the failure of the government of dealing with them. And eventually, 5 years after the disengagement, the government established a state investigating committee. I was a member of this committee, and we learned for a year of the major terrible effects on the life of people when they are being evacuated. And over there, it was without a combat. They weren't facing death in the family and in the community. They were just moving. But just moving is a big deal. Many issues arise. First of all, how do you preserve the spirit of a community in a condition of exile from the settlement? Are you going to take the whole yishuv, the whole settlement, and put them in a high-rise somewhere for 2 years till they will rebuild their settlement? Do you know what will happen to the emotions of the people, to the ties that tie them together? What will happen to the kids who are not used to it?
The social fabric of the community, right?
Yeah, what will be the school they will go to? Psychological, social, and economic issues. Many of them used to work in the settlement or in the area of the settlement. Now they will be evacuated to somewhere else. They will not go to work. Even if you will provide them with salary, it's not good enough. People want to go to work to feel wealthy. And we know from the past experience of Gush Katif that families are broken forever. So many people divorce each other. So many kids turn their back to the parents. And now we have to eliminate all these threats. Now, there are ways of doing it. We have the information that can really help. The government apparently is trying to do the best right now. As you know, the government established an administrative body that's supposed to take care of the evacuees in various aspects. Just yesterday, an amount of about 500 million shekels was transferred for this purpose to this body, and hopefully they will use it smartly. I just want to say that we cannot expand on the details, but we need to keep in mind the spirit. Ben-Gurion told us years ago that in the Negev, Israelis and the state will be tested. Now we have an opportunity not only to bring back the people to a normal kind of situation, which is obviously we're obliged to do, but to actually change the whole situation of the Negev and to rebuild it and to make this terrible occasion an opportunity for the future. This will be our rightful revenge on the killers of the Hamas if we will take care of the places, of the people, and of the Negev. And the Jewish Agency has some keys to help. And when you hear Amira, you know that there's a good chance it will happen.
Yeah. So, Amira, you are in the Jewish Agency. You mentioned what, some of the mobilization of what's happening for these displaced people, for the refugees, trying to find long-term solutions, because that's one of the big issues, right? People are thinking right now, and the government is dealing with right now, but you have to also think, as Yedidia said, years ahead. How are they going to maintain their community? So I'm curious, what are some of the solutions practical that are on the table right now that maybe the Jewish Agency is involved in? But also, you mentioned briefly how diaspora Jewry has been mobilizing to assist with this. If you could give us also maybe some examples of what that means.
So first of all, I will say that, it's been over 50 years that the Jewish Agency has been in this domain of partnering between communities abroad and communities in Israel. This is not something we have started doing today. Since the 70s, when Project Renewal embarked, and we had dozens of communities all across the world partnering with neighborhoods and weaker cities in Israel, and has helped them for many years to build up and develop not only physical infrastructure, but the social tapestry of those places and leadership. And then in the 90s, Partnership 2000, which created this notion of creating partnership between a region in Israel and communities abroad, which then developed in the 2000s to be P2G. We currently manage a network of 46 partnerships between 46 towns and regions in Israel and over 400 communities abroad. And some of them are maintaining those relationships for over 25 years. If you go and see the kind of impact that Chicago has had in the last 30 years in its partnership with Kiryat Gat and Lachish, right in the south, and also with that region around Gaza, when you look at partnerships like Metro West and Ofakim and Merchavim and others, what you will see is not only flow of resources, but mostly relationships who've been built over years between youth, between professionals, between families. This has become their go-to in Israel, their intimate place. They've become a wider family. And so when we think about mobilizing these kind of partnerships, I want to share with you that the most present thing that happened during Saturday that I hear from my staff and teams in the South is the hundreds of calls that they have received from their partnered communities and people who care about them from overseas to care and see how they were. And then those turned into many emails, and then those turns into many visits. We've already been hosting and receiving dozens of missions of leaders and community members from all across the world who are coming to pay solidarity and to want to show all of those evacuees and people who've been affected that they are not alone, that this is actually a multiplying power to know that we will be able to win and rebuild ourselves. And so when we talk now about moving into this phase of, let's say, a midterm temporary residency of those communities, from there they would hopefully be able within a year or two to somehow plan, a thriving future back in the region. We know that we don't want them to do that alone. And we know that Jews all around the world want to play a vital role. They want to help this rebuilding. And there are so many ways that they can do that. They can do that by coming to volunteer in many ways. And we are now looking into what those opportunities are. Needs across Israeli economy and society are immense in terms of enabling volunteers to come and fill some of those needs. We look into people who would partner with those communities for a period of 3 to 5 years and become intimately involved in helping them, in holding their hand and being there with them, both with supporting with resources, but as well as with visiting and building relationships. We have just seen some of those communities who've already hosted kids and youth coming from those evacuee communities to enable them some respite in their communities and provide them with some hope and optimism, and vice versa. And so we're seeing so many levels of opportunities for that to happen. And we are in final stages of modeling what would a premise of saying no community is left behind look like? That we make sure that every one of those dozens communities, we're now going to go through those 2 or 3 years of building themselves back and then transferring themselves back to the permanent place where they would live. They would know that they're not alone. And so the Jewish Agency builds on its capacity, on its experience from the past in doing so. I should also say that the history has shown that after wars, there is big potential for a wave of Aliyah. And so we're monitoring that closely. This is still too early to look at that, but as we come to hopefully the day after when this war ends, and we think about ways to provide growth in population to those regions and think about the revival of a thriving future in those regions, then motivating and encouraging Jews from all across the world to make Aliyah and become part of those new thriving communities is yet another way. So different layers and ways, whether through volunteerism, solidarity, partnership, supporting with resources, as well as eventually, hopefully, also Aliyah.
One of the other issues that we're seeing now, and this kind of falls also into the Jewish Agency's domain, but Yedidia, let me just get your thoughts on this. We saw obviously the massive rally that took place this week in Washington, D.C. Numbers, different estimates, but around anywhere from 250,000 to 300,000 people, probably mostly Jewish, also non-Jews who were there. We're seeing this explosion of anti-Semitism. We've spoken about it a bit over the last couple of weeks here on the webinar, but really this challenge that we face here is also now to a large extent all over the world, and Jews everywhere have this sense, I would say, a growing sense of insecurity that maybe they didn't have on October 6th. They definitely now have since October 7th. And when we think about that, what role in a bigger way, and then I want to hear from Amira maybe what the Jewish Agency is practically doing, but what is the role that you see, Yedidia, of maybe the state of Israel's role here with helping to empower, keep safe and secure Jews and Jewish communities around the world?
Well, as we all know, for the last 2 decades, there was a widening gap between Jews in Israel and Jews abroad. And I feel that right now we're witnessing the other direction. We are becoming again one people. You can feel that people in Israel and people outside of Israel are feeling again like, interlocking vessels. Just as we in Israel are in crisis, diaspora Jewry also feels the crisis, not only because of what is happening here, which is obviously they care a lot of, but also because of the ugly anti-Semitic wave that is attacking them abroad. So we are both in a crisis, and this crisis puts us together again as one people. Now, the demonstration in Washington, the march, showed the amazing strength of American Jewry, and they showed their support for the nation state, their nation state. As a Biden administration feels pressure to change its supportive policy on Israel and the military operation, I think that the political and moral power that American Jewry is expressing now will play an important role as a counterweight to those who want Biden to retreat from his current policy. And I think Israelis appreciate the support of diaspora Jews, the political support, the emotional support, as you mentioned, and the economic support. All of this is a big, big difference for us Israelis, that we have brothers abroad, and they are not the biggest brother, but equal brothers to us today. Now, it seems to me that in the foreseeable future, we will embrace each other in many, many ways. And it's up to the Israeli government not only to help on Hasbara and to help fighting anti-Semitism. Obviously, it is part of the job. But the government of the nation state should act as such, meaning should talk directly to Jews in the diaspora, makes them welcome here. We know that there are differences regarding religion and state, regarding values of human rights. Nevertheless, we all understand now that we are sharing the covenant of faith. And we have to overcome the value dispute and act as one people. Now, the Jewish Agency and JPPI are initiating an online academic course for Israelis here in Israel that will deal with the topic of Jewish peoplehood. So it seems to me that now the ground is ripe more than ever to study and internalize the covenant of faith that connect Jews, and the Israelis would listen now to this, and this might turn the page in the not so easy relationship into a new chapter. Hopefully this lemon will become a lemonade.
Amira, so the Jewish Agency obviously, plays a big role. They have, whether it's providing security means and resources also for different communities that can't provide it for themselves. As you watch this explosion of anti-Semitism, and it's all over, right? It's not just in America, it's France, I think I can only imagine what just regular British people, regular Brits, non-Jews, woke up Saturday morning this past week and saw those tens of thousands of people marching, what they said to themselves, what's happened to our country. But this is something that's worldwide today, and a worldwide phenomenon that Jews are facing. You mentioned briefly, in passing, just the expectation of maybe Aliyah. I've seen some numbers and some reports of how many people, yet maybe to open a file, but to express interest and to turn to you guys and say, what do we need? What are the forms to maybe get that process going? Can you talk a bit about what that expectation is? And just by the way, maybe I'll just add to it. I was looking up Aliyah numbers a week or two ago. We saw, for example, after the 1967 war, an explosion of Aliyah, particularly from North America. But we saw after the 73 Yom Kippur War, a huge decline in Aliyah, right? So there's also the element that is tied to what happens here in Israel will have a direct impact on whether people feel that we're safe and secure and we're the place that they will want to tie their fate to.
So first of all, I think it's a bit too early to try to make any assessments. And when you look at the data, what we do see is quite naturally reduction in number of people who make Aliyah, though not stopping Aliyah. I can share with you that just this week, I visited in our Carmiel Absorption Center and welcomed 250 young adults who decided to make Aliyah Davka these days. Wow. About half of them to the Machal program, to then volunteer for a year and a half in army service, and about half of them, and those who are coming from all across the Western world, and about half of them from the former Soviet Union, 17 years old, came without their parents for a 7-month program to then be drafted in the army and stay in Israel. So I could not be more moved when I spoke to them and heard that they didn't hesitate even for a minute. And they believe their place is here. And again, all of those 250 young adults came without their parents. Nevertheless, you're right to know that Aliyah numbers currently are down. People are hesitating. People are looking, to see what will develop. We do see increase in opening Aliyah files, which is not an indication yet for Aliyah, but it's an indication for a rising interest to do that. It means that they have embarked on the first step of the formal process, both in North America and mainly in France. But we've learned in the past that, these kind of security situations could play as push and pull factors. But again, we are in initial scenario planning, but not yet, I don't feel responsible enough yet to try to assess out of that. But as we look into, the longer term, we believe it will create an opportunity both for a rise in Aliyah, but also in channeling the Aliyah that would come to the Negev and to the Galil. So using, those as a way to kind of strengthen the rehabilitation and revival of that region. I'll say that we're very, very concerned about the security situation in communities. What's mostly concerning in this wave of violence is the number of physical assaults and threats, vandalism, especially in campuses, but not only. And most concerning is that we hear more and more reports about people who are afraid to live Jewishly and attend Jewish institutions. And I think this is the most red alert that we can imagine. If you have a mother with kids that is afraid to send her kids to school or to buy a kosher product in the supermarket or to attend the synagogue, this is a role the Jewish Agency has been playing for the last 10 years with its special security fund. We're providing hundreds of community organizations with physical means of security. using the expertise of security arms here in Israel, work hand in hand with them. And I can tell you that in the last week, we have identified over 500 community institutions around the world in more than 40 countries where we will provide emergency grants to help them cope with this situation, to expand, whatever it is that they need to do in order to make sure that Jews will continue to attend those community organizations.
That's, just two thoughts that come to mind. One is just about the Aliyah. On the one hand, obviously, I would love to see more people make Aliyah to Israel, but you don't want them to you want Jews to be safe in their own countries.
Right.
It's this, and then when you're mentioning the campuses, how many shlichim do you have now around, or on college?
So 93 Israelis, the best of the best, creme de la creme, IDF graduates, boys and girls from all across, diverse community from all across Israel, society.
And I can only imagine the challenges, how important, and their role is always important, but just today with the campus situation, how much more existential it's becoming for these, for them to
I should say that they are no less than risking their life in some of those campuses. We're working hand in hand with Hillel at every campus to make sure that they are safely able to attend, and carry their work. I can tell you that they've become a central address, to the Jewish students there who need to cope with this horrific situation in some of those campuses. And they've been at the forefront of many of those violent events and protests that they had to bear with. And keep in mind, those are Israelis that their families are here. So many of them have lost family members or have lost their own friends. Some of them have got, Tzav Shmone, and all of them are attending wider community events and providing the opportunity to tell the story from firsthand, to share the grief, to share the pain and the sad days that Israel is going through. I think their role has never been such important, as well as our younger shlichim. We have hundreds of shlichim all across the world who I think, are playing a critical role today to try to bring our side of the story, and in a way that, is building openness in the hearts of the community members all across the world.
So before we wrap up, let me just go quickly, Yedidia, then Amira. 6 weeks we're into this conflict almost. This Saturday will be this marking week, the end of week 6. Give us something hopeful ahead of Shabbat, Yedidia.
Well, I'll tell you something personal. Since I have 4 soldiers at home and another 2 sons-in-law, last night, out of these 6 young guys, 4 came for barbecue. So I guess Tzahal feels comfortable to let them go a little bit, to take it easy on one hand. On the other hand, it shows that Tzahal apparently is planning for a longer kind of thing and they have to refresh. Our hope is that eventually this terrible experience will change the mood inside Israel between the brothers, in order to push Israel for a new horizons of solidarity between brothers. This is a wake-up call, and I hope we will be woken up by it.
And Amira?
So I'll first join Yedidia, in his words. I also really hope, after many months of a huge, breakdown here in Israel in many ways, the last couple of weeks, I think, has brought us to be united as we have not been for a long time. And there's a big question whether, that would hold also when we come to the day after. And so my prayer is that a lot of the energy that came from the civil society and the initiatives and the care and the arvut hadadit that is what was most present in those 5 weeks in the absence of others who weren't. And I'll keep it this way. I hope this will serve also as a way to heal what we had to heal after the last couple of months. I'll say that for me, when I think of the Jewish people, I really think of it as multiplying our power. I know it gives me the sense that we're not alone. And when we talk about Yachad Nenatzeach, I think, added to the 9 million citizens here in Israel, 7 million Jews, and then take a similar number or 10 million outside of Israel, I think this is what gives me the sense that we could win. I think knowing that we are together, that we multiply the power of one another both ways, by the way. I think Jewish communities need a strong Israel, and we need thriving Jewish communities in order to envision any thriving future. And so I draw optimism from that when I see 300,000 Jews from all across North America rally in DC in this iconic historic rally. For me, that's strengthening me, as well as I know how it strengthened Israelis here to know that they have that kind of support. At the end, we I think at this moment are not yet in an aftermath. Unfortunately, we're still in the midst of things. So, praying for hopefully not having such bad news continuing day after day, and bringing back all the captives and the people who should go back and be with their families, come back alive and in good shape is something I pray for every day.
Amen.
Amen. And on those two, I hope for many more barbecues, Yedidia, at the Stern home. And on those optimistic, hopeful notes, we'll sign off for the week. I want to thank Yedidia and Amira and the Jewish Agency, JPPI, and all our listeners and viewers who've been joining us over the last 6 weeks. We'll be back on Sunday, taking a break as usual for the weekend for Shabbat. And I'll join with just my prayer for a quiet and peaceful Shabbat for everyone here in Israel and around the world. Thank you very much, and Shabbat Shalom to everyone.